Word to the wise, we are an explicit podcast tackling content with adult themes as well as entering spoiler territory if you aren't caught up with us. This week, that is Through the End of Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. Hey there, this is Cross.
This is PJ. No funny stuff, no nonsense. We're just getting straight to the point, apparently, on this one.
And we are Words and Whiskey, a podcast for veteran and novice readers alike. We tackle fiction novels and love to talk about what we're drinking, and you should think of us as your intoxicating weekly book club.
Insert filler here.
Insert filler here, indeed. Today, there's so much that we have to go through that we're kind of, I don't know, we're blitzing this intro a little bit, but that just is the case. But we're going to have to be talking about this a lot over the course of the week. But of course, spoilers if you haven't read this book, but to pour one out for our boy Cassius.
If you haven't read this book, stop listening. Go away. Read the book.
Yeah, no.
Right. We warned you already. So we've only got the good stuff in here.
Yes, only the good stuff. And only the good stuff for our boy Cassius at the top of the episode, of whom will be a downer for the rest of it. So cheers.
Cheers.
That won't be the first time we're drinking whiskey in his name today. So today is our 12th episode of covering Lightbringer. We're going to be talking about chapters 83 through the end of Pierce Brown's Lightbringer.
We're mostly going to talk about 84.
We're going to talk 85. A lot about 84. We're going to talk a lot about 83. It's 84.
It is 84. It's 84. Yeah.
There, let's talk about what we're drinking first. I have so many feelings. This episode is not going to be like conventional in any way. I don't know. It's been a day. I spent the better part of today writing these notes, and I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm in a weird spot emotionally.
Yeah, you can tell going through the notes. Oh, man.
But it's definitely a thing.
In a continuance of our no nonsense honoring Cassius, my cocktail is whiskey. It consists of whiskey. So I got my bottle of Tyrconnell single malt Irish whiskey, aged 10 years and finished in a port cask. It's very, very, very delicious. I love this whiskey. It's a little bit less sweet than you'd expect from an Irish. You almost get sort of a smoky note, but it's not really smoke. It's just a lot of barrel. And with that port finish, it comes across really, really smooth and drinkable, but you can tell you're drinking whiskey and it doesn't feel like you're drinking something sugared. Like, I feel like when we drink Jameson every once in a while, I always feel like there's some back sweetening to it. I know there's not, but that sweetness that you find in Irish whiskey sometimes is really great and can be really great in, like when you do like a Jameson ginger or something like that, that sort of ginger complements the sweetness quite a bit, but this doesn't quite have that same characteristic.
Yeah, I totally get that. And, is that all you have? No beer, no nothing to follow that up with?
I've got juicy bits.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, from WeldWorks.
Cool.
Talked about it before, but I still had another one in the 4-pack, so.
Great beer. Great follow-up. PJ, this is the episode in which I have the most drinks in front of me that I've ever had. Just to be perfectly clear. There were 6 cups on my table.
All right. I don't think anything can beat the Trial of Stains.
True. The Trial of Stains, I guess, technically wins. That was definitely a lot. Fair enough. Outside of the Trial of Stains, this is the most liquid that I've had on my desk.
Okay.
I have conventionally a tea, which is just, every episode, and water. Traditional, something I do every time. I have the shot, of which we started off this episode with for Cassius. I have an additional pour of whiskey for Cassius, or the man, to cheers. later, of course, as is necessity. And then I have back half beer, which is called Midtown Swank, which I chose specifically because it gave me a little bit of remembrance of the chin when I was in the liquor store picking out a beer this weekend, because I knew that I had to do this eventually. And it just felt like the right thing to celebrate the chin. Double IPA, very tasty, from Wilmington Brewing Company. And then I have a cocktail that I made today for Cassius called the Eagle's Reprieve, which is a whiskey cocktail. I imagine this kind of being like his sort of like a, it's a reprieve. It's what he goes to when he's looking to relax and maybe looking for a little bit more, actually throwing something together in his room, but also with the limitations of the spaceship, right? So like nothing too crazy or specific, and maybe he's just hunting around in drawers to try to make something, which wasn't what I did. No, that's not, I didn't do that. So
proud of you for being prepared.
I actually, fun fact, I did make this cocktail this weekend originally, and I perfected it. So like I made it twice over the course of the weekend to like dial it in. Well, yeah, no, I did dial it in. This is great. No, it's very tasty. Yeah, but what it is it is 2 ounces of bourbon, a half ounce of creme de cacao liqueur, a half ounce of maraschino, a half ounce of the sweet stuff, which is just the sugar water that gets hot and you stir it. That's the simple. I'm going to fuck up all my words all day like this. So I'm just getting you guys used to it right now. Simple syrup, half ounce of simple syrup, egg white, 1 ounce lemon juice, and these nutmegs shredded all over the top of it.
All right.
Shaken, typical top of the Angostura bitter. And it is very tasty.
It looks really
basically
good.
Super good. A Christmassy kind of whiskey sour, kind of with like a little bit of that sweet chocolate backing. Really rich and complex. If you don't like whiskey, you can absolutely swap it out for rum. I've had it both ways. I swapped in bourbon the second time that I made it this weekend, and I liked the bourbon a little bit better myself, but to each their own.
Nice. I very nearly made the cinnamon milk punch that I made for a cocktail party that I went to this weekend, but used all my cinnamon syrup at that cocktail party. So
that'll do it.
That'll
do it. All right. So that's what we're drinking on this lovely episode. PJ, before we talk about the chapters, how do you feel about this week's reading? How'd you feel about finishing the book? How you feeling going into what we have?
I'm feeling really good. Feeling happy that Cassius is dead. Feeling great that Lysander's on his way to like truly conquering the universe, like his destiny says he should. Don't like that Darrow and Diomedes were able to get out alive, and mostly I'm just vibing with Lyse.
With Lyse? Yeah, he does get called Lyse once during this chapter, and I was like, what the fuck? I mean, it makes sense, but it was like a lot at the same time.
No, I'm feeling heartbroken, and yeah, I get it. I get it now.
You get what specifically?
All the very, very nasty words said about Lysander online.
Yes. Yeah. The thing that we were talking about months ago, you kind of understand now. Yeah, I do get it. I mean, yeah. I mean, he stranded a civilization, which is crazy. Like, and he's prepared to commit genocide twice.
It's all in service of his plan. Like,
sure. Whatever that means. All right. Well, there's a meaty ton to talk about. I guess before we get into some of the specifics, now that we're at the end, because I feel like we will be incoherently babbling, there's a chance that this is 2 episodes, even with how much shit we have to talk about. We'll see. You won't know until the end of the episode or the timestamp, listener, because we don't really know at this point. But there are a lot of notes. There's a lot to talk about. But I did just want to ask in general about your sort of feelings on the book on the whole.
I think I mentioned last week that I was a little bit concerned with how this might end and if it would truly feel like a book ending, as opposed to just kind of, I have to split this up, and here seems like as good a spot as any. And it does. It feels like it wraps up really well. I imagine that if this was a giant, like 4,000 page tome, this would be a part break. So it makes sense that like it was able to be shored up into a book. And man, I love this book. I really like the stories that are presented. I like the perspectives that we get. I'm surprised but not disappointed. Like, based on how it turned out and how the story progressed, I'm surprised, but I'm not necessarily disappointed in that we didn't get Virginia at all after that parlay. I mean, or after the evacuation. Like, we didn't get any more of her perspective. We didn't get to hear anything about her interactions with Victra after the fact. Like, I know we will. I'm curious if we'll step back in time a little bit and see some of the happenings from Mars's perspective, maybe as like an epilogue to the next book or something like that, or a straight up like time jump part. I don't know. I'm curious, but we're pretty locked in with 3 perspectives for most of this book, right? And even at that,
I mean, 4, Lyria, but
I was thinking Lyria, Darrow, Lysander,
and Virginia. I mean, like those are your 4,
for
right?
most of the book, for like the first third, Virginia's there, but isn't it like 2/3 of the book without her?
Yeah, for the most part, the back 2 parts, basically. So Tempest and Brothers, right, are completely devoid of Virginia.
Maybe
because
it's like
she is really just in part 2, which is like 120, 140 pages. Whatever part 2 is, specifically the Battle of Phobos, is basically the only place that she is in the book. But at the same time, Lyria is only in part 3.
That's a good point.
Just for comparison. But
yeah,
part 3 is a much larger part than most of the other parts of the book.
My perception is so warped on this because of how long we've been covering it. I mean, we've been covering it for 4 or close to 4 months at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Close. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's hard for me to remember how long ago it was since we saw Virginia. It's been a couple months.
I don't think that's unreasonable as far as like a take goes for, like the length of time. But I would say that I also felt that way of like, wait, where was Virginia in this book, and kind of like the scope of it all, because she does. And this isn't a critique. She just falls out of the story because she's not relevant to what's happening there.
I mean,
right?
It's like Severo falling out of Dark Age.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's
unless
not
you
relevant
wanted
to
to
what
give
we're
a
talking
separate
about,
perspective.
So.
Yeah, right.
And it lends isolation. It puts us in Darrow's perspective of someone who doesn't have access to that. I don't know. It's a fine line to walk to give an audience the information of all the characters that we're dealing with, and also try to put them in the headspace of arguably the main character of the entire story.
Mm-hmm. Lysander.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kid. But like the 2 main characters that this story is predominantly about. Like a lot of this has been, over time, we've been gradually whittling almost to that point. I'll be curious to see. I'm sure she will be an important character that will give us a perspective on the war through Volga and the Braves, but I'm curious to see how much of an impact Lyria has in the next section. Because I do feel like, not that her story came to terms, but she's had a lot of things wrapped up, not the whole entirety of her plot, which I think will involve like returning to Cabax and back to the Telemonuses and things like that. But I'm curious to see if she'll have sort of, if she'll be peppered throughout, or if similarly she'll be like a burn like Virginia for like a part, basically.
Yeah.
I'll be curious.
Yeah, me too. Given the way that she wraps up in this book, I could see her being a sparsely used utility for exactly that reason.
Yeah. I mean, there's still a story to finish with her, but
I could also see the perspective switching to Volga.
Sure.
I think that'd be really interesting. I don't know. I don't know what sort of perspectives we'll deal with, if it's been confirmed or not that we'll deal with the same ones.
No idea. Truth be told, and for the most part, I think it was until I think I mentioned it like an episode or two ago, I had kept myself from listening to anyone else's anything, any of the interviews, any of it, because I just didn't want to be like thrown. And like 2 weeks ago was the first time that I watched, or like a week and a half ago now, was the first time that I had watched an interview, and it was the Hail Reaper one that they just did recently, which was excellent as like a post on Lightbringer. So it was great. It was good.
Awesome.
All right. Let's get into this. We got a lot to talk about. We're going to talk more about the book in the end in a wrap up anyway, so we can get into some of those more specific thoughts and kind of dive deep and break them down. But it's time for us to talk through the 2 Lysander chapters kind of back to back here. So hardcore debate internally on, I love the yay, of putting 83 last week or this week as I was looking to break this up into the 2 episodes. I feel like 83 has such a heavy hand of possibility that it felt like a worse cliffhanger than what's going on with Darrow, just because it like, you know, you kind of see this stuff coming because of Cassius being there, but not the specifics of it all. And it makes you think too much about like, what will Atlas do, I think, versus,
right.
You know, I don't know. So I had a long thought going into this.
I like the way that it was broken up.
That's good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. With that, let's get into chapter 83, Lysander, A Way Out. We open this final week among the stars with Lysander as he returns from his conversation with Diomedes and Darrow. And we're confronted with both Demetrius and Marcus. And you can, I think for the first time in a long time, palpably feel that leash that Atlas has around Lysander's neck grow tighter, especially in his absence.
Yeah, these Gorgons or Praetorians, I can't remember what category
they're
they fall
A and
into.
B. It's both.
Okay. Yeah, they don't even pretend to have any amount of respect for our perfect golden boy at this point. It caught me off guard, especially when he starts like trimming his toenails, but it also... what caught me more off guard was Lysander's sort of casual response to all of it. He doesn't act disrespected, and maybe that's just his headspace doesn't really allow him to like be in that prim, proper, like golden boy state that he has to be in later. But I don't know, felt odd.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, well, what do you do in that situation? Like how do you react differently? I don't know, in my head at the very least, because like he's trapped and it feels that way. And the nail clipping in particular is a great example of like, yeah, you can't do anything. You're less than dirt to us. Like you don't matter in the grand scheme of things. Yeah. Gross. So the kill pool partakers leave Lysander to a shuttle and room where Lysander requests a drink from Exeter, kind of calling out to his manservant to help him out here, and is instead greeted by his old friend Cassius, of whom has left Exeter for a short nap. Not a long one, but he also notes the stolen tiger armor that Cassius is wearing at the moment from a new shepherd. And while it's a small thing, Cassius's mention of the unmentionable here goes a long way to say that new clothes, same emperor is definitely a thing under the watch of Lysander with, I think his name starts with a C. I don't even remember what it was, but just the sort of assault and the moment that he stole that from that piece of shit Gold, of whom, you know, fuck, man.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't, but I felt surprised and a little betrayed even by Lysander's lack of reaction to Cassius's reveal about this new shepherd.
Strabo. Yeah.
Strabo. Yeah, because I kept thinking it was almost Strawberry. I'm glad that Strabo was relieved of his dick before death.
Yeah. Good on Cassius. I mean, yeah, I was just sort of appalled, particularly in Lysander's reaction. I think that's what really similar to you. That's what really like got me, is the fact that like he didn't even think for a moment about it, really. Outside of the fact of like, where'd the armor go? And it's like, oh yeah, this is just kind of a normal thing. It's a consequence of whatever the hell. But like, that's what you're trying to stand up against. Like, that's the whole point of your new shepherds. And you're already like just fine with that. What the fuck, man?
Yeah, the priorities are really kind of fucked, because he takes pride, or seems to take pride, in knowing that, like, knowing their names and knowing their backgrounds and knowing all these facts about them. But it's all just, it's personnel files and dossiers that he's memorized. It's not anything to do with their actual like conduct under his leadership.
It's theater. There's a good argument inside of all of this, and I think you can even pose this for most of Lysander, or at the very least through most of Tempest and Into Brothers, that he has learned how to act like Atlas from Atlas. Like, he is becoming Atlas by and large, of whom, yes, he's just like adopted that as his personality. He's gone from this guy of whom like worshipped the Stoics and this concept of being an iron gold and honor, falsely, but he's like instead propelled himself down that path here at the end.
Yeah, but not
about utility.
Not even in a way that's like, not with conviction.
Yeah,
he's been dragged down that path and is kind of floating down it, but he's not embodying it like Atlas does. Like, even though he's
not sad about it,
despicable. At least he like knows what he's doing and does it on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Does it with purpose. I would also throw
that too. Like, yeah.
Man, it is.
If you're gonna be like a tyrant dictator, be a convincing one.
Yeah. We're gonna talk about that a lot over the course of the end of this. But like, Jesus Christ, man, this is the beginning of like. There are a lot of like different points that I've definitely pointed to over the course of this, kind of quietly while we were going through it, where I thought I saw like different turning points. To me, I think the biggest one is Roan, and the reveal of Roan being a traitor is the one that I think shakes Lysander the hardest, in my opinion. And that's when I think he starts to kind of go down this path, not able to kind of see a way out, but at the same time seeing the way out is to just follow.
Yeah.
And imitate. Yeah, but this is crazy. I can't believe the man. I can actually, because I've read it, so I fully can believe it.
True. Good point.
So we find that it is Pytha of whom let our golden boy onto the ship, and he mentions that if you wanted to kill Lysander, he would have hidden in the closet and burst out while you were meditating upside down, practicing Mithridatism. And Mithridatism is the practice of poisoning yourself slowly with non-lethal lethal doses in the hopes of becoming immune to the poison, which brings us to the second time that we've mentioned Princess Bride during this novel, I think, if not more. But, at least the second time.
I like to say that I was very curious about the definition of that word. But I think I was mostly just a little bit curious because I didn't take the time to look it up myself. So... But I love the use of the term here and the sort of, what would you call it? An accusation, I guess, that Cassius throws Lysander's way, or it's more of an observation than an accusation, but just buying into the society sort of.
Yeah. I think it is kind of more of an offhanded, like, oh, you've fallen back into the old ways, have you, kind of thing. But like offhanded in not like a completely out there way, which I really appreciate. I will say, in my initial note taking session when I was burning through this book and reading it in the coffee shop, as it were, that we've talked about many a time, when I was in the coffee shop, I took it down as Mithraicism in my head, not Mithridatism, and I didn't double check it. And I was like, oh, so we're talking about like the old world religion from the basket of the world and whatnot, and yada, 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 early BC, of which was recently, I mean, it's talked about a lot as sort of like a general historical faith, but recently in Raised by Wolves in season 2, Mithraicism is like the whole holy cast of warriors in that show in season 1 and season 2. And season 2, spoiler, brief spoilers. This is nothing absolutely crazy. It won't shake your world. But season 2 ends with a man looking like he's hung upside down in the air on a cross, and he's a Mithraeus practicer. And I was like, wait, are you making a Raised by Wolves reference very directly right now? Are you saying Raised by Wolves is canon? And then coming back to it, I went, oh no, this is different word. Not what I thought it was. Yeah. Not Mithraeism, Mithraetism, which is, it sounds similar, but it's also spelled so differently. Anyway. Poison aside, they continue to discuss what their path forward is, and Cassius extends his hands to offer him a way out, to rejoin him on the Archie and put all of this behind them. He mentions that he's done with this place and calls back to Morningstar, or that he's done well with this that he's done well with this place and calls back to Morningstar when Cassius was last in this very room with Darrow. Another full circle moment.
There's something very, very human about how Cassius's recollection here is written. He's fumbling a little bit about the type of whiskey and relying on this sense memory of the smokiness of the liquor to bring him to focus on the scotch. I don't know why that stuck with me, but for whatever reason, the verbiage and just the mundanity of that little bit to be included in this conversation felt really human.
And like that thrown against the, like with Fabiai's blood still drying on the floor or wet on the floor, whatever it was, it's like, that's just a juxtaposition, that you don't really think of immediately when you consider died there in this very ship.
This very ship.
Yeah. Cassius continues to kind of go down this path and asks him to unpack his feelings of when he saw him on Mercury, and they get to the heart of the matter, but not before drawing petty comparisons between the two of them. Lysander and Darrow both took their small strikes against each other, a room and a ship, neither theirs, but owned much by them as the other. Kind of a fun, another parallel that we get between our heroic and anti-heroic pair.
Yeah, it really adds to that Morningstar Lightbringer comparison we've been talking about. And much like that formal blood feud sort of ritualistic word, they are devils to each other.
Yeah, devils to each other indeed. They constantly haunt each other. And wow, I understand the tricky situation, the absolute gambit that Darrow was facing down when he was sitting there across from him with Diomedes, but how I don't wish he'd listened to his first instinct and pounced.
Yeah.
Although ultimately, I think that would have been worse because he would have lost Diomedes as well, which leads to a whole different problem.
I think Diomedes would have reacted.
Probably true. He probably would have had to kill Diomedes too, or die. And then neither would join to fight Atalantia, which is the only reason that his hand was stilled. So I get that.
Convince the Rim Lords of anything.
Yeah. How I wish. We get back to Cassius here, and he says, "Life's not all war, Lysander. I've always wondered the people we'd be if we weren't born with these names. Bellona, Lune, they've given us such horrible choices to make. Choices we never asked for. I know we got the riches too, but it's not fair, this inheritance of yours. Selenius squatting on your back since you were born. Everyone else thinking being born a Lune is a blessing. But I know it's a curse." And he continues just a little bit after that, talking through this whole thing with him. He says, "I can't imagine it. It's required you to shift your shape to survive. It's not your fault. It's kept you safe over all these years, shape-shifting. It's the only thing that has kept you safe, being what Octavia wanted you to be, what your guards expect you to be, and what Atlas needs you to be, what I needed you to be."
Here in the depths of this really emotional conversation with Cassius, I really couldn't help but imagine Lysander reverted back to a child. Like, he seemed so small and broken and taken advantage of. And obviously this is from Cassius's perspective. It's his words. It's not Lysander's, but it still, for whatever reason, evoked that imagery in me.
I think it's like understanding a complete picture of a person, right? The thing that I would give Cassius a ton of credit for throughout this whole thing is how this all, like, how it all shapes out for him as he sees Lysander. He has a complete view of who this kid is, in part because of how he was raised, in part because of how he saw him, in part because of raising him and kind of understanding him over the course of that decade. Yeah, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
It's also tough to like unpack this without like talking about just like the absolute shit that Lysander is in a little bit, you know, like trying to be reasonable.
I'm trying.
Yeah. Which is that was the only pro that I could come up with in my head to do maybe this chapter last week as opposed to this week, was because it is impossible for me to go ahead.
Because it separates it.
Yeah, because it's almost impossible prior, very easy for me to like mentally separate the death of Cassius from the moment and like try to be positive about all the Lysander stuff to some degree, like hold it together and hold down, you know, sort of the perspective as the book wants us to kind of interpret or take it, or, you know, presents it to us at the very least. And now that we're like in it, it's like, well, I know how I feel about this. And you know what's there. So yeah, it's a difficult little line to walk. But so Cassius dives even a little bit deeper, explaining his own place in manipulating Lysander to fit him as a replacement for Julian for his brother. This whole part is brothers. It's been focusing on brothers. You note over the course of listening to this that I focused in on all the moments where brothers or brotherhood was mentioned over the course of this book, because it's been all building and maybe obfuscating to the singular point coming up here in Hangar 17B. But Cassius has been trying to fill that hole of his brother, and he did it the wrong way, as opposed to he looked to carve someone down, like you said, to fit that. And once he did fit it, he resented him for not being his like actual blood brother Julian, his sweeter, quote, younger, quote, twin. Yeah. And like, meanwhile, you've got an actual brother that isn't trying to fit that in Darrow. So,
I mean, it's 11th hour when it comes to Cassius, as we've mentioned. So it sucks that it comes so late in the game, but it is really great to see Cassius actually confronting these feelings about Julian after all of these books. And he has in the past confronted feelings, but those feelings were shrouded in rage and depression. And now he's able to kind of get past that fog a little bit and really kind of analyze his relationship with his brother a little bit and how it relates to the way that he's been living his life for the last 2 decades almost. So he had that little conversation with Darrow about Julian. It wasn't quite as deep as this one, but still it's nice that he's able to bring him up openly.
Yeah, and able to kind of broach that, because that is a foundational part of what kind of broke him to some degree, right? Like if we think about Julian and his overall like impact on Cassius is very important. It's what turns him away from Darrow right away, and then leads to sort of the rivalry between them in the long run, that then forgoes what could have been a very powerful and like excellent friendship that they then just are able to rebuild, you know, right now, finally, and at the end of Morningstar, when they finally kind of saw eye to eye again. Yeah. Now Darrow never gets to say another word to Cassius ever again. Got our last moment last week.
He gets to say words to Cassius.
Okay.
Cassius, Cassius doesn't get to hear them
back. Yeah, fair point. You asshole. So Lysander has a little quote about the whole thing, about sort of this concept that's been juggled a lot of the book, and in particular, I think is critical to both Lysander and Cassius's arc, right? A lot of Cassius and Lysander's arc together was focused on honor and iron gold. And over the course of Dark Age, we come to sort of the no honor, no time, which is, you know, sort of his initial cop out. And then this is sort of his final kind of explanation of sorts that he arrives at talking with Cassius kind of about the subject. And he says, honor. It sounds so silly when you say it enough. It can excuse anything, but we only pretend it protects. Yet it is there, a feeling of what is true and what is slippery and false.
in his attempt to sound so smart and so above everybody else, he's completely lost the meaning. Like he's found the definition of the word, but not the meaning of the word, if that makes sense.
Yeah, the spirit of the idea.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a word to be defined. It is a way to live, right? And that's the difference between Lysander and Diomedes, period. That's why they make such great foils to each other.
Right.
And then Diomedes to Cassius as well, as different definitions of how to approach honor or think about it.
I'd say theirs is fairly similar with different focuses. Like Diomedes
yeah.
Like they're right. I'd say they'd probably agree that each other is maintaining a level of honor that makes sense for what they're going for, one to themselves and their family and what they believe is right, and one to their oaths and their people and their entire dominion, which those lines fall in different places when you're dealing with those different subjects. But I think they'd agree with each other if they really had an in-depth conversation about it.
Yeah, I think you're totally right. I think they do largely agree on it. And if we were to get like that sort of like honor bowl conversation, I think that would be a great one. It'd be one for the record books. I also think that there's something to be said that Cassius learned a lot about honor from the Raw in his time there in Iron Gold in some ways, you know, and especially from Diomedes, because I think comparatively Cassius is fallible, and I don't want to say that Diomedes is infallible, but his honor is unshakable at the very least, and Cassius is fallible, I would say, by comparison.
So what we really need is for Pierce Brown to just Control Z a bunch of times, just undo everything that happened to Cassius, let him survive, and then Cassius and Diomedes get together and produce a podcast called the Dragon and Eagle Honor Hour, where they just talk about honor every week for an hour.
And it's mostly Diomedes sitting there going, "No, shut up, Cassius." Cassius is just blabbing on the other end.
Oh, of course.
Making jokes and clips.
Very nearly a one-sided conversation.
Severo the cord at one point on Cassius in the middle of the podcast from under the table.
He's the audio guy, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely the audio guy. Dara's the occasional special guest. He's like, fucking no. I don't know, dude.
I'd listen.
I just want to see my son. Yeah, I would tune in. I'd subscribe. I'd join their Patreon. So, kind of trying to make our way through the end. There's so much to fucking talk about in this chapter. But Lysander, for the first time, this whole goddamn book, finally breaks down and does what he's failed to do with everyone else. He tells the complete truth to Cassius, not the muted truth that he told Pytha or the lies that he fed Cicero, Diomedes, the shepherds, Horatia, Pallas, all of them. This is the truth, unadulterated, out of his mouth, admitting out loud that he knows what evil shit he's doing. Sorry, I put the context on that last one, but you know.
Yeah, no, I know. You're good. It's pretty hard to feel bad for this man, but it is hard to overlook how
after
many
this
puppet
chapter
strings have been like connected to Lysander at this point, and that's not a good way to go about life. He has not led his own life in any capacity for most of it. Even, I'd argue, based on this conversation with Cassius, even his time on the Archimedes, he's maybe not a puppet in the same sense, but he was definitely being led to act the way that Cassius wanted him to. So that's hard to deal with. Something that's very interesting to me that happens right around here is when he starts like shaking and convulsing a little bit and like gets uncontrollable to a certain degree. Are we to believe that this is like extreme nerves or something that's like connected to the mind's eye somehow? We know it was solved by the pandemonium chair when his memory of his parents were like wiped. But I don't know if this is like separate from that or if it was just like he had this feeling of extreme stress and anxiety when he was thinking about his parents, that it caused this physical reaction, and Octavia took it away through pandemonium. Or if it's something more supernatural than that with the mind's eye. I don't know. I don't know what to think of it.
I don't think there's anything supernatural to it. I think it's more of a natural reaction than anything else.
But the fact that the only other time that he can think about this happening, I think if that's the case, that speaks to how uncomfortable he is right now and how like fractured he is internally. I would assume.
Yeah, I think so. I think that, I think that building up your entire life in shrouded in some kind of lie like that, or even like just uncomfortable intrudes that you hold in, or just difficult things that you weren't saying, can lead you to that point, right? Like that's sort of the like 40-year-old breakdown because a man hasn't gone to therapy in however long. It's the same kind of thing. But to your point, with the pandemonium chair and with Octavia, I do feel like that is him having an emotional reaction to the fact that his parents are gone. And so she removed that from him. And so she's removed experiencing pain and loss from him. So he's never had to like grip with it, or like his way of coping is just literally shutting it down now, in part because of the chair and otherwise. So
that makes sense.
It's a moment of weakness physically expunged from him, which is fucking crazy. And also makes me feel the slightest bit bad for Lysander.
A little bit.
Yeah. There's a little bit of tinge of humorlessness there. But I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be happy reading Lysander chapters in Red God.
Really?
I'm not going to be a happy camper.
What?
Really? No way. But he'll be full villain at that point. He proves it right here at the end. So,
yep,
that can be interesting in its own right. Ah, man, yeah. But I think that's a brutal moment, and it's tough to parse. But I do think that it really comes down to sort of, it's just a real emotional, visceral reaction. He doesn't have coping skills.
Do you think
he doesn't show real emotion? He's an actor. He's a puppet.
All right. Hear me out. Cassius turned into a real villain when he killed Fitchner, and he got redeemed and became a brother. And now we're all sad that he got killed. Do we see anything like that happening with Lysander?
I don't see any possibility. I see his head on a plate.
Yeah.
With grapes in it.
Do you think grapes?
I don't know who you'd send it to, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
His own balls, I guess.
I mean, can we just like impale him asshole to mouth?
No, Atlas is dead, unfortunately. That was his job.
All right. Mouth to asshole then? Like the other way around?
Sure. Yeah. We can invert it. Several will do that.
Perfect.
We'll do that.
Perfect.
Yeah,
okay.
He's down for a new calling card.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get there. So shortly thereafter, rounding out kind of that section here, he agrees to the plan to kill Atlas. Pytha comes into the room, and our Iron Gold family is reunited for the first and conveniently the last time, all
Very
alive
convenient.
in the same room. Well, I mean, maybe it's not convenient, but
what a beautiful, convenient reunion.
What a convenient wedding.
Oh, man. I was totally on Lysander's page here, though, with his paranoia. And like his stress about not being able to confirm Pytha's true identity, and nothing that the pair of them did any good in trying to like dissuade those fears or that stress. Like Pytha's responses do nothing to address the idea that like, oh, this could be an imposter. And Cassius barely acknowledges the line of inquiry at all. It very easily could have been a ruse, but I know Lysander was just so high strung and so paranoid that there wasn't really a reason to feel that way. I don't know. Would have taken a lot of effort very quickly to compose something like that.
It would have taken him a long time to kind of get out of that. Yeah, I do find it really difficult to escape, but at the same time, I think he could probably just call in the guards and like, you know, if Pytha was someone mysterious, I think he would. I mean, kind of in the depths of a massive moonbreaker that, you know, is filled to the brim with people of whom will try to kill someone who kills Lysander. But, you know, still, he could have died. He could have. Yeah. Unfortunately, he didn't. With that, we get to chapter 84, Lysander, Hangar 17B. I'm going to do my best with this chapter. This is the single longest chapter in the novel by a significant margin, and for good reason. We could probably do an entire episode just on this pair of chapters alone, breaking down a lot of the things between the relationships and sort of symbolism, and talking about even the depths to which Atlas is acting and behaving in the moment. There is so much minutia here, and we're going to get into it as much as possible. But yeah, so if we belabor the point, I'm sorry, not sorry, but we're going to be talking about this chapter for a while.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the notes again right now, and it is well endowed.
Well endowed is a good way of putting it. It is a thick bastard. So,
oh God.
We start, of course, in Lysander's perspective, angling to meet Atlas in the hangar he'll arrive in. Cassius is here when get the jump on Atlas, but Lysander cannot know where he is, otherwise he may give him away to the master tactician. We find this even as he has decoy ships land early, throwing out the jam field and everything like that. Roan also trudges out, following him in full armor, all contained within a jam field. And this whole thing feels like an entirely different game from the get-go. He quickly tells Atlas that the whole thing has gone awry, that Fa is dead. Roan quickly dismisses the attending Gorgons and leaves just the three of them and a couple of other Greys to talk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those decoy ships and the existence of the jam field in general made me pretty wary. Obviously, Lysander is a pile of nerves here, and we're in his perspective, so his anxious rambling didn't do anything to dissuade that wariness on my part. But yeah, I was ready for shit to go down. Totally.
Yeah.
I was ready for Lysander to get caught off guard.
Yeah. I think either way, shit was kind of going down here to some degree, especially because Atlas felt kind of disrespected in the way that he was like, I told you to meet me in the bunker. And Atlas already feels like his leash shortened significantly since some of the sort of changing of plans and the reactions of like Marcus and Demetrius and Drusilla and whatnot over the course of the last couple of chapters. Mm-hmm. There's also a lot of the Gorgons are incredibly injured from their trip to Orpheus, which is of note, of course. And we can maybe dive into this with a little bit more specific research and talk about it in the wrap up. But I love the call out of Orpheus, and this being the container for the Aidme. Orpheus, of course, being the one of whom had to go rescue his love Eurydice from the depths of Hades and whatnot. But
whatnot?
Yeah, popular story, popular mythological story.
Yeah, one of my favorite orchestra pieces that we ever played when I was a cello player was Orpheus in the Underworld. I don't remember who composed that, but I really like that song.
Nice. So Lysander continues to play for time, explaining that it was Darrow who killed Fa here, as nothing seems to be grabbing Atlas's attention. He's kind of just sort of bouncing off, and it seems as though Lysander believes that he might already know all of this. But the conversation continues, and he's not dissuaded with fact after fact. So Lysander drops a big one. He saw Darrow. This gets Atlas's full attention, and he asks a legion of careful questions designed to structure something from nothing. He sends away more Praetorians based on very little information and asks one more question. What did he say to their offer? And man, what a tense scene that this is. He grips his shoulder and asks about the trip to Orpheus and Aidme and whether or not he knew anything about those either.
It's fucking intense. It's so fucking intense. Everything is. All of this is. It is masterfully written in the way that Lysander's inner monologue is like just going nuts. He's vibrating with anxiety, and you can feel it, every single word of it. I do wonder if the shoulder grip at the end is actually what gives him away. like Lysander assumes at one point that he could feel the scarab skin under his shirt or something like that, or if that's just more paranoid rambling. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like it is. I feel like it is. He knows that this is going to give him away. I get the feeling that what's the next question that Atlas is going to ask? Why are you wearing scarab skin? He's not going to ask. He's going to attack or maim at the very least, because he's like, why are you being so defensive? If you're coming to visit me, that shouldn't be a concern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The series of questions I particularly love from Atlas, because he is able to basically say, okay, so you entered from this side, he entered from this side. Okay, there's a bunker about 1.3 kilometers east. Go check that. If you find him, do not engage. Otherwise, take scraps of like metal or whatever. And he like lays out these like very clear instructions off of so little information, because that is how methodical and ridiculous and tactical and truly impossible to beat he is.
It's
like
impressive. It's super impressive. And
it's ridiculous.
Still the question of, is there a mind's eye component to this? We don't know for sure with Atlas. Or did we learn?
We kind of think he does, based on an interaction that he has with Lysander, because he says, don't use the mind's eye on me, boy, back in Dark Age.
Right.
Don't try that with me. Something like that. So it seems like he can, which is also another reason that I think this is more of a general thing, but I think throughout the entire book, part of the reason that Lysander doesn't use the mind's eye nearly as much is because he knows that Atlas knows when he's slipping into it. So he gets good at lying and like not needing to withdraw to hold himself together.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's why like there isn't a whole lot of mind's eye in this book either. But yeah. Whew. So at the point at which he touches the scarab skin, the game is up. Lysander goes for the graze behind him, and Cassius pops out of the cockpit and begins to fire on Atlas with a heavy pulse rifle. Lysander cleaves through the shithead pair of Drusilla and Marcus that have been haunting us all book before taking out the other three behind them. He's struck from behind by several shots from Roan, including one that splits his sidearm. This fight is fast, brutal, and efficient. I mean, this is I think the single longest combat scene that Pierce has written, but also feels so like lightning, blitzkrieg pace.
Yeah, I would argue that there's probably like Battle of the Ladon is like several chapters. I think.
But that's not a fight scene. It's not a scene. It's like a bunch of scenes.
Yeah,
like it's a war.
Okay, that's fair. That's a good point. So yeah, probably.
The only one that I can think of that is close is if you included all of Thaw's stuff together. I think you could cohesively.
Yeah, that's probably true too.
But still,
I giggled at the single swing taking out both of like Marcus and Drusilla. Just fuck them hard.
Mm-hmm.
Just wonderful, bloody, brutal fight.
Now, a question for you. Over the course of this fight, or this chapter, where was your head at with Lysander? Did you believe that he was in Camp Cassius or like pro Cassius, or like what'd you think he was going to do? I think because like this reads really good to me. Like this is a moment in which I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, Lysander, you got him, you know. But in reread, I'm like, yeah, you got him. They sucked.
I believed, I truly believed that he was not necessarily going to run off and join Darrow, but I thought he was going to continue working with Cassius. Like I believed that there was a path forward where Cassius was. Or where Lysander was kind of a double agent of sorts in comparison to Atalantia, and would have been able to dismantle the problematic side, which is all of it, but the more problematic side of the society remnant from the inside. I truly believe that there was a righteous plan in this moment.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it was not that dissimilar. I was like, okay, they're going to go through with this. Like, and that means that something is going to happen because we know that they can't, like, we need Lysander in theory to take out Atalantia easily. So is this the moment? Is this like our turn? All the faith in the world up until there's a couple of lines.
What mostly sold it for me was how paranoid Lysander was throughout all of this. And like,
yeah.
And for good reason. Like, he wasn't lying to himself even. He was betraying Atlas. He was going to kill Atlas. And I think at this point he had no intentions of killing Cassius either. I think even up to the end, he didn't have intentions of killing Cassius. There are some points where that gets touchy. I don't know. But for the most part, I could be persuaded to believe that he never wanted Cassius to die.
Yeah, and we'll definitely talk about this once we get there a little bit more, but I'm of the opinion that I think the choice was still on the table. Like, the choice of whether or not he was going to kill Cassius was still on the table.
Yeah.
Whether or not he was going to commit to doing it or not had not been settled in his head. So, yeah, I would say it's not that he had ruled it out entirely, but it's that he was still in the maybe camp, because that's where Lysander lives. That's even where he lived in the decision, and Atlas patted him on the back for it, moments before from where we're talking. So, yeah, big indecision guy, that Lysander. So Atlas is having a really tough time against Cassius's fire, literally boiling his skin inside of his shield, which is crazy just from the heat of the bullets. And he quickly gives Roan kill clearance, and Roan shows himself to be a truly unique killing machine over the course of the next couple of pages. Lysander attacks, but Roan almost feels like he's toying with him or playing with him, and shows that grays really can stand up against golds, at the very least at the very top of their echelon.
Yeah. Throughout this entire story, despite all of the accolades and the lessons given to Lysander and everything that we've learned about Roan still seems to come out of nowhere somehow, just unleashing a punishment of brutality against Lysander. I don't know if it was kept secret from Lysander. He doesn't seem to react in a way that, like, oh, this is more than he should be able to do.
Yeah,
doesn't seem like caught off guard by it. But for whatever reason, I always thought of Roan as like over the hill and a commander because he's kind of retired from prime fighting status. Nope, not one fucking bit.
Yeah, part of me, I think I thought that because of especially like mentions of his mentorship previously of like Holiday and Trig, and like there are so many things that just like date him. He's
been old enough to be a mentor for a very long time.
Yeah, exactly. So he does kind of feel like he should be over the hill, but instead he turns literally into Rambo and will not stop and cannot be stopped. Somewhere between Rambo and the Terminator. I don't know. Maybe the Predator. The Predator's more accurate. Never mind. It's just the Predator. He's got so many gadgets. So the fight continues, and despite being pinned by Lysander's razor, Roan puts up just an incredible fight. He even like slides himself up on the razor so that it cuts him worse because he can get a better shot that way. Like, he's very aware of what limits he can and can't push. Is basically just trying to find the moment in which he can push over and win the fight. It seems like he's willing to take sacrifices and wounds to gain an advantage, so that he can potentially take him out with a kill shot. He pops out a dagger and buries it in Lysander's chest as he comes for him, puncturing a lung, and begins just punching him out, hitting him in the throat a bunch. Roan continues to fight doggedly before Lysander spears him with his razor like a javelin in the shoulder. He rips it out, pops out a boot knife that we had seen earlier from the other pair of Gorgons, and then charges him dual wielding and barking like a dog, which just absolutely unhinged craziness. But notably from this exchange, he's well practiced with a razor, which we know is not typical.
Yeah,
not allowed.
That surprised me. Totally surprised me. And maybe it shouldn't. Like, Atlas is one to be as resourceful as possible, and I fervently believe that Atlas is the one that taught him how to use the razor.
I think so, for sure.
But I would have thought that Atlas would hold on to that gold only sentiment of razor wielding too. I don't know.
He's anything for the cause, though. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, he's anything for the cause. So I think that's why he would be the one to do it and commit to it, especially because and given Roan wasn't out there in the Inky Black, but I would imagine out there a lot of the Obsidians would know how to too. I'd be shocked if Fa didn't know how to use a razor, genuinely.
Oh yeah, I mean, his war saw is effectively a razor. It's not.
Yeah. Actually, but he also,
but he grabs Bad Lass at one point,
throws it and spear. Yeah. So he does at the very least wield it a little bit. He's not like razor fighting necessarily, but yeah. Oh God. So crazy. I mean, the fight with Roan is just nuts. The combat moves to closer quarters, and Roan pops out another knife, driving it through Lysander's fucking arm. He just continues to stab. This one was a chest armor knife, so I don't know where the first one came from. It must have been like a hip knife. The second one was a boot knife. Third one was chest armor, and it's just like, where the fuck do you get these? Father always said, can't have enough knives, but keeps swapping it out, and he's driving it through Lysander's arm and into his cheek. Like he's just jamming that fucker in there, trying to cut through this boy princeling to kill him. It's tough from a guy that has been like protecting him for books now.
Yeah.
I mean, we kind of knew that he was shit at the beginning here, but he even gets to the point of tickling the roof of his mouth with the blade. Lysander loses 2 fingers reaching backwards for his razor, grasping the blade instead of the handle, cutting off his ring and his pinky finger. Roan falls shortly thereafter, sprawling sideways. He swats away the warrior's last attempt as he stands up, kind of limping. He throws this black needle at him, and Lysander is able to bat that out of the air before Roan mutters his final words. "If I was born gold, I'd eat you alive. No blood of Silenius. No." Before Lysander Before Lysander ends the terror with 3 vertical slashes into the brain. He snags Roan's pistol, reloads, and returns to Cassius and Atlas.
But triple lobotomy is pretty safe bet in killing somebody, but I was still expecting like just some death rattle, some shiver or twitch or something in defiance against death from this guy. I feel like something like that would happen in an adaptation. Just a little shudder.
Considering everyone else twitches, you know what I mean? Like Cassius twitches, he has a seizure is what they say when he's dying. Atlas twitches and then kind of like falls over, you know? I mean, it's shocking that Roan doesn't, but I think that's why he gets the 3 is like, do not get up. Under any circumstances.
Yeah.
Oh God.
What a fight.
Man. Yeah. I mean, Lysander almost got owned by Gray, but
maybe you should stop thinking Gray? So much about superiority.
Yeah, fair point. So, man, from that moment, as mentioned, we return to Cassius and Atlas. And wow, what a fight theirs is as well. I cannot wait for an adaptation so that we can kind of see the moments cutting between these sort of conflicts or the way that they interweave with each other, even forward and backward as you see them dimensionally across the space. It will be very, very cool because we really come upon this mostly at the remnants. We approach the end here, and Cassius is missing his right hand suddenly, fighting with his left. His leg appears to be a little bit of limping. Atlas is not doing great either. He's been boiled from his suit, overall wounded in his leg, I believe, in addition to his arm. Lysander tries to aim to shoot Atlas, but he can't because his left eye is damaged again, the same eye that he'd replaced post-Dark Age and that Darrow had damaged. But just like after his conflict with Darrow and Mercury, as I mentioned, in the duel, they continue and show that they're well matched. There's even this moment where Atlas one-handed vaults over Cassius and stabs him in the shoulder a couple of times, which is crazy. But Cassius wins in the end with patience, wrapping Atlas's neck with the razor, and the Fear Knight is brought to his knees. But he's actually standing. He's kind of just standing there because he does topple over later.
Yeah, here's further proof, I think, in my head that Lysander truly didn't want Cassius to die, because this could have easily been a shot to kill both of them, or a couple shots. Mm-hmm. He couldn't get a clear shot without Cassius being in the way on Atlas. It would have fucked up his plan, like his claim about like who killed who. but I think he would have taken that chance to guarantee Atlas's death a little bit sooner. Yeah, just would have fucked up his little theatrical narrative that he concocts.
Yeah, if he had from the get-go wanted to kill Cassius, there's no reason he would have taken the shots there.
Mm-hmm.
You just spray.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the one exception being, it's really hard to pin Atlas's death on Cassius if they both died of the same gun.
Yeah, very true. Very true. That would be a very difficult thing to do. Although that is kind of the way that it goes anyway, right? Like,
yeah, it's true. What the fuck?
But then he burns the body, so it doesn't matter. Yeah.
CSI really takes a dive later on. I feel like they could figure out burned bodies nowadays. Did they just lose all of their ability to do so in the distant future?
Well, I think it's more like the bullet, right? Like what would you find in a, and the fires are hotter, PJ. Don't you know?
And Lysander controls
more
the police.
Soft. Yes, there's that. There's probably that. That's probably the one actually that matters. Guyver's kind of a shit, to say the least. But oh man, yeah. Fear Night finally being brought down, though. That conflict is so cool to see, and to see Atlas be defeated by Cassius, you know, despite everything that comes after this, is also such a win for him to have brought down arguably the most terrifying villain in this series up until this point.
I just wish he would have gotten the actual kill, you know? He gets credit for it. He did all the work.
I agree with you. Difficult to parse. We'll talk about that in a moment here. That's probably the most that we have to unpack with this chapter is that. So, yeah, there's this moment as well that happens. Lysander internally remarks on something here that haunts me out of all of the moments that we've talked about. By the time we end the chapter, or well before we end, but by the time we end this little section, it haunts. And then especially by the end of the book, it's worse. But he says in his head, "The light is green. I wish Pytha could see. We've won. We've won. I stumbled toward Cassius, searching the deck for my prize."
So this feels weirdly like a Great Gatsby reference.
What do you mean?
Looking at the green light off the dock across the water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pining over something that can never be.
That's interesting. That's I
don't know, though.
Actually, interesting. I think
it's been a long time since I've read The Great Gatsby too. So
no, you're totally right, because the whole thing is like, then they die in the car crash, right? Like the green light's used as sort of the large metaphor for a lot of the book, and then in the end, it's the three that we're talking about that die in the car crash or in the results, and it's part of because they were, well, is like the illusion of the light. I don't know. There are components there, but I like that. I hadn't considered that at all. Good one. Good.
Slipped a literary reference into you.
Yeah, you got me. You got me good. I hadn't thought about that at all. That was good. It does. I'm gonna have to think on that a little bit more. We're gonna come back to that maybe in the wrap up, and I want to take that apart a little bit more, because I like that. I like that idea or that reference, because it evokes very similar feelings, because it is sort of this. I mean, for us in this story, it's the complete family and the potential for them to be that, right? And otherwise, I think it's mostly used as like the unattainability of love for the group of people involved.
And I think there's also
to, like, be true to each other,
lying to himself, because while I don't think he knows that he's going to kill Cassius here at this moment, I think he knows that they're not getting together as a family. He knows he's betraying Cassius at this moment already.
In this moment, he knows that he's betraying Cassius
and
regardless.
Pytha.
Like he is pinning this. Yes.
So saying we've won is
we've won now, and I'm about to change that.
Yeah. But it does feel like pining a little bit, or wanting.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I love that. All right. I'm cracking the beer here.
I'll do the same.
The whiskey's going to come out in a moment. But so Lysander orders Cassius to kill Atlas, and he pauses just long enough for Atlas to sneak in information. Atlas, with like dying throes, basically says, ask Lysander about the weapon. Selenius's, biological, eat me. It can target a color, any color, on any... He isn't allowed to finish the sentence as Lysander shoots him in the head and his brains turn into mist. He teeters and falls, crumbling to the ground with a bored smile still blazoning his face. The Fear Knight is dead.
I totally expected like a nest of wires and circuit boards and sparks coming out of this motherfucker's head. I was really expecting something not actually human. Like wires and circuits and sparks and stuff is a stretch, but like,
yeah,
I expected something, but no, he's just a dude.
Just a dude who can wear other people's faces. You want to talk conspiracy brain for a moment? My conspiracy brain was on fire here. And I think it's tough when Pierce has also shown that the Fear Knight wears other faces for me to not go, well, would someone else wear his face? They wouldn't be able to tell if he wasn't wearing his skin because the skin burned anyway.
Yeah.
In the suit. He didn't look that closely at it.
There are a whole bunch of decoy ships that came in. I don't know.
Yeah, he's arguably a very smart dude. So I do believe that he's dead, though. That's like a 5% holdout. Maybe it's a 2% holdout.
I like
just because
idea.
I do enjoy Atlas as a character, and that feels like
he's
it would
such
be
a good character.
Something. But
he's such a disgusting, horrible, awful, vile person, but such a good character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's despicable in a fun way. I think just because of how he's written in particular. But yeah. He's dead. Mist, topples over, falls to the ground, shakes once, dies. So we move then to Lysander trying to give Cassius an out as Cassius comes to grip with the pact between them and the awful possibility contained within. He doesn't have a whole lot of time, of course, to pierce this sort of information and piece it together, but Lysander acknowledges the damage that Atlas's last words have caused and calls the Eidme his chance for peace, despite Cassius even being able to work out the etymology being close to eat me and just sort of the danger of this prospect.
Yeah, it's disgusting. It's hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that Lysander was able to break the illusion a little bit of what Atlas was doing and kind of like shake himself free of that, but still holds on to this Atlas's understanding of the weapon of Eidme. I am curious how close the etymology is to eat me.
It's not that far off. It's actually like, if you were to look it up, that's pretty close. Consume, I think, is the word, not eat. But kind of that's the idea, right? Is that Cassius doesn't fully know or understand.
They break it down saying that it branches into edit earlier on in the book. But
right.
Yeah. Consume makes more sense.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions, I think, that are around Eidme here. And I think that it's proper to like think and consider Atlas's perspective. So as opposed to entertaining a lot of theory here while we're trying to break down the text, I've added that one to our list of for sure wrap-up questions to talk about, because there is a lot that can go into, like, Atlas is so smart that is Eidme entirely like a false flag? Could it be something that was like meant to be like an invisible weapon to be held that actually doesn't do any, like, there are a lot of like giant question marks around this, and like, why does he utter it in the end? Does he think that Lysander is worse than Cat? Like, we can go down that rabbit hole for a long time, and I definitely want to. I feel like that's a wrap-up conversation, though.
Yeah, totally. Do we have a document already made up for?
No, I started to use the bottom of this one, but
okay. So just as long as we can start that somewhere, document. I'd love to remember to do that.
I did write that one down immediately as I was starting to do even most of this chapter. I was like, how much do I put in and how much do I put into a wrap up? I was like, well, I also don't want the wrap up to just be about this chapter.
Yeah.
But
it's a pretty pivotal chapter.
It's true. In a bunch of different ways.
But to bring up something that you kind of hinted at of like what's Atlas's motivation for bringing this up to Cassius. Atlas is really fucking smart. And I think I think he probably recognizes that this knowledge damns Cassius too. Like I think it's probably a jab that wins that fight. I don't know.
I want to debate this, but this is one that we could go on for a long time about, and I think we can definitely do that with a special guest of whom we will definitely have on the show to talk specifically about this part, because he has a little bit of redeeming to do with his Lysander talk. So,
all right, perfect.
But
watch him come and defend him. Watch him do it.
No. We've talked long and hard about this. But I'm particularly excited, and I feel like this fits the bill. And I think that this conversation can sprawl in so many directions that we're just gonna excise that one, and you're gonna have to come back.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Because to your point, I have 4 other points that we could wander down forever, and I think are worthwhile to consider. But it's a branching path. It's as complicated as any decision in Baldur's Gate 3.
Not that hard. You just press a button.
Yeah, but like the long-term impacts, PJ, the long-term impacts. Cool. Lysander has a fucking internal quote here that shook me when I was reading it for the first time, in which I knew the choice that was being made once again. And I sent you the screenshot earlier because I was taking notes while I was sitting in this coffee shop doing this read along. And I highlighted the quote and put a little note that I'll read in a moment here. But the quote is, "A loaded pistol can weigh 24 ounces or a lifetime of regret." And I sent you the quote, and it says, "Oh my fucking God," with a period after it. And that's all. And then I just had to keep reading. I didn't have any other thoughts in the moment. I just went, no. This cannot be what's happening right now.
Yeah, very similarly to that, just immediately upon reading that, it was sinking black dread in my mind. A very, very well-placed, well-worded sentence within this chapter on Pierce's part. I love how succinct that is.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. I mean, I'm gonna just read a bunch of quotes for the rest of this. Almost, not quite. They're questions and talking points, but a lot of this is just so well written that it was tough to not just put all the quotes in. And at the same time, I feel like I don't do it justice if we don't. So I just did. So fuck it. We're going to keep going. But that started this sort of spiral of what is the rest of this chapter. And I think it's also when Lysander starts to realize that the decision has to be made sooner than he probably wanted to or thought it was going to have to be.
Yeah. Even then he begs for, I don't know. It's so hard for me to like figure out what's going on in his head. And I think it's probably hard for Lysander to parse what's happening in his own head. Still ask Cassius to leave. But I don't know. It makes me feel like he's trying to get away with killing Cassius without actually maintaining eye contact with him. Almost. Like it feels rehearsed. It feels certain.
Yeah, there's definitely something there. I mean, as we come to the point, like Cassius laughs just a little bit and he has to come to terms suddenly with who he's facing down and how wrong he was about Lysander on the whole. And that hurts, I think, to like place your faith in someone that way and then to have them come back and bite you. Even puts it back in no uncertain terms towards him, saying, "You use me for that, for this, to cut your strings and pin it all on me, the betrayer?" To which Lysander responds with a simple yes, before Cassius's heart shatters in real time as Lysander says that they're not brothers and that he will be sovereign. He'll have his little fucking morning chair. Yeah, this pouty little child.
This in conjunction with that, the weight of a pistol quote just feels like his mind was made up beforehand. And it's counter to everything that I've been feeling from like the fight scenes and his pleas for him to leave and not.
I think I do have some agreement with you. I feel like he probably wouldn't be allowed to leave. The only thing that gives me pause in that assessment is the fact that he does let Pytha leave so easily, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that there is a genuine possibility that he might have let him go. But I think Pytha, at this point, his mind is practically made up. He lets
Pytha go because it allows him to set traps. He knows what information she has and knows exactly like who she's going to with it. So he can kind of use counterintelligence and I don't know. He knows what they know now and he can work around it. Whereas with Cassius, he is too wily and too adept.
Pytha also doesn't know anything about Idme. Pytha also doesn't know anything about Idme.
Also true.
You know?
Also true. But neither did Cassius before this, so, which is kind of where I'm debating. I think after Idme, yeah, totally wasn't going to be allowed to leave.
Yeah,
but I'm wondering even before Idme if he had plans on executing Cassius anyway. I don't know. I don't fucking know.
I think it's good and healthy that we kind of debate when that choice is made, and I really like sort of that side of the conversation. I do know that Pierce did say within that interview, that one interview that I watched, which they did talk a lot about this scene, he did cite not necessarily the moment in which a decision was made, but he was still of a split mind. Like in this moment, he still wasn't settled, like just in general throughout the chapter. And I would have to double check, and I'm not even going to say it anyway, because I don't want to A, put words in his mouth, but B, I think that the whole point of our experiment is not to make something care so much about the sort of authorial intent so much as what we see from the page and what the text gives us. So,
yeah,
to that point, you know, we'll talk about it later, but I'm with you. It's like a constant juggling, and it's a constant question, and it's painful constantly. Right? Constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they return to the Idme that sits between them. Cassius asks rhetorically, but it's safe in your hands? To which Lysander says back, practically pleading for his fucking morning chair, for this place in glory, for his place in history, for his inheritance. If I don't control it, someone else will. Why not me? I didn't start the war. I've only ever tried to do what is right. Why not me? Cassius, ever hopeful, bright man, replies, your strings are cut, Lysander. You're free. We can take on Atalantia. Is that not enough?
It's so damn close. So damn close. I really feel like if Lysander had a couple of days just chilling on the Archimedes with Cassius, Diomedes, Darrow, Severo, Lyria, Ore.
We'd be dead if Severo was there, just to be clear. It wouldn't matter. Yeah. But yeah.
All right. Everybody's got like
no knives.
Bindings. Like everybody's just sitting, they're talking, they can't physically touch each other. I think that they could have gotten through to him. And I think some arguments could have been made that could have swayed him to act a little bit differently here in this moment. But they didn't feel like they needed to do anything more because he went along with their plan. And
yeah, it's honor, right? He betrayed the honor that both Diomedes and Cassius said that he had, right? It's this slippery thing. No, it's a slippery thing when it's in your hands, my boy, because you don't actually believe that honor is real and tangible. You've proven that time and time again here. And I think that this like, on top of that, he says, I've only ever tried to do what is right. No, what you've done is you've survived. It's what Cassius said before. You've shapeshifted to live. And that's a sucky way of like having to go through life in order to survive that way. Like, definitely understand. Really bad time for Lysander. Can get that. Can get, like you were saying last week, that it feels like Lysander has never had a choice, but he's always had a choice. It's just that they don't always lead to him surviving, which isn't great, but there's still choices along the way that he could have made that were different. I mean, going back even to Iron Gold, his choice to not listen to Cassius is what led them to get caught, which then leads to this whole cascading thing. Like he's had many choices throughout time, and oh God, I can't do that without talking about the very next moment, which it gets to choice, right? It's the quote.
Yeah. Before we get there though, like just to kind of argue a little bit against that.
Sure.
Yes, there are choices that he could have made, and yes, they would have killed him. And it takes a very, very exceptional person to make a choice that they know will kill them. And like,
Diomedes, Cassius, and Darrow all did it, though, this book. You know what I mean? Like, all of
very
them.
Exceptional people.
Yeah.
And I don't think almost anyone should be faulted for decisions that, like, for not taking the choice that kills them.
But he also made choices that killed his friends. So he did make choices along the lines that made his situation worse as well.
Yeah, that's true.
He has had ranges of options. Maybe not always the best options, but he chose intentionally. Like, he could have stayed with Alexander and given himself over. That entire thing that happened, like, he could have in Dark Age, he could have turned around right then. I mean, there are so many moments in this book. Has he had a whole ton of choice? No, I think he's been puppeted pretty clearly and he can't escape it. But that's, I think, because of cascading choices that he's made over the course of time.
I can get behind that.
Like, this book, not a whole lot in the way of choices outside of when he stands up for the 100 speech and that gets Glorostes killed. Like, that is a clear choice that he is making. And that's maybe the biggest choice that he's making up until this moment.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a right or wrong thing.
No.
I just think that there's like a lot of, there's a shocking amount there to talk about. And I think that is going to be a core discussion, especially during Red God, is at what point could Lysander's path have changed? And I think the reality is any of them, a lot of different points could it have changed. It could have changed when he was offered the choice with Darrow and Diomedes. Like, he had that choice right there recently.
Yep.
Even.
Totally.
Yeah. He's given choices. Sucks. Okay. To talk about choice. We're going to end up talking about Lysander so much in any of the wrap-ups. It's impossible not to, of course. But continuing on through the chapter here, of course, that can't be the end. As Cassius refuses to leave, Lysander says that he is choosing death. Cassius says back in an indictment of all that Lysander has ever been and ever possibly could be, "No, Lysander, you choose. That's the point of it all, isn't it? You choose. The chair means this much to you, more than the people in your life who love you, and nothing changes or shakes in the Loon Boy at that indictment," which is when I gave up on Lysander.
This is totally 100% an Obi-Wan Kenobi Anakin moment.
I was so happy when you put in that little tiny note, because I was like, it is, and I don't want to explicitly say it. I'm wondering if you got the same vibe.
Oh,
because
totally.
It is.
Completely.
This is exactly like you were supposed to be the chosen one. Better, though. Elevated. I don't get it. Ugh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Beautiful, tragic scene.
It is such a good scene, and it is so tragic. It's such a strong showing. I mean, by all accounts, for the pair of them. And I mean, he's trying his damnedest. He's stretching beyond the depths of friendship. He's already been insulted. He's already lost all of his will that he had for the man is degrading. And Lysander is just telling him, "I'm not who you think I am. I'm not who you think I am." And he's like, "But you, even if you're not who I think I am, you can still be a good person." And that just continues to dissolve as we continue down this path, to the point where Cassius says, "You're being ridiculous. In the end, I'll be more famous than you anyway." He's just kind of throwing his life because he knows that it's already forfeit, because he knows what he's going to do. Cassius has made up his mind at this point. Mm-hmm. It's Lysander's choice to make a different decision. And he says, "Cassius Bologna, the man who killed fear." A final note of grandioseness from our boy. He dares Lysander to kill him, saying, "You won't kill me. You love me too much. The guilt will crush you." Before Lysander replies, "I will learn to bear it." Cassius again returns, "No, you won't. But if it must be guilt that drags you down, brother, I will be your millstone." And brings up one final story between the two of them before his final stand about going and getting candy at a candy store.
The response is perfect. It's fucking perfect. Yeah. And I can see this totally haunting Lysander, but I can also see him purging it all from his memory whenever he regains access to Pandemonium, if he does.
Yeah,
I
think to
could
your
see
point,
him purging all of his time with Cassius from his memory,
and Atlas, I would say,
and Atlas,
because I mean he suffered greatly at the hand of Atlas as well.
Yeah, he's going to make himself into the person that he strives to be
in the books, in the history books. Like he wants to. Yeah, I agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally self-motivated and self-accomplished. They have access to Pandemonium still, right? I believe. We think.
Okay. Yeah, we believe. I believe that the Pandemonium chair was disassembled by
Virginia
Mustang.
took it apart.
Yep.
And produced
but repurposed a lot of different things from it. So
yeah,
Pandemonium itself may not be there, but it's not like the technology is gone. Yeah. All right. The quote. It's time for the fucking quote. The last of our boy. So Lysander says, basically he's encouraging him. He's cheering. He's like saying, don't do this. You don't have to. And Cassius replies, I must. I am Cassius Bologna, son of Tiberius, son of Julia, brother of Darrow, morning knight of the Solar Republic, and my honor remains. He charges forward to Lysander towards his death. Lysander fires at him and remembers and sees only the good things as he guns his friend down. The razor stops just shy of getting to him, and in a moment, Lysander feels unclear on whether or not Cassius chose to kill him or not in the very end.
I don't believe that he would have killed him. I don't think he would have. I don't think he could take it.
Yeah.
Maybe. But nah. I do appreciate that in this reiteration of that time that he was in the bleeding place, repeats that my honor remains line, obviously, but drops the ow in his name.
Yeah.
Even though he's not amongst anybody else within the Republic, he's just with Lysander. He still maintains that.
Yeah, and it's also, there are two interesting components here. It's not the first time that he's done it this chapter. He also did it earlier when he says, Cassius Bologna, the man who killed fear.
That's true.
So very, very similar at the very least there. But I think that harkens to the same point of like, it's not for anyone. It's for him. It's what he believes in. It's like the family that he's found acceptance in finally. So he owns that. He owns his sort of like name and what he thinks there, which I think is great in these last moments, especially as like one of the last two Bolognas. It's just him and Julia. So that's it. The line dies here. Mostly. We assume that Julia probably can't have kids or wouldn't have kids at this point, but it might not be the case.
I mean, they're so fucked with their like patriarchal society that I don't think it'd be a Bologna if she had a child with someone else.
Fair enough point. To kind of add to the mix, just returning back to the scene and just for a moment, to your point of, I don't think he would have killed him. I don't think so either. I think he probably could have or would have. He could have thrown the razor at him. I mean, like there are so many things that he could have done if he wanted to kill him. And like specifically, Lysander remarks that he's slow, and he remarks on all these things. And that's when he says that he sees only the good in him in that moment. And I think that it's like a game of chicken, and part of him doesn't believe that Lysander will pull the trigger. And so that's why I don't think he was going for a killing blow regardless.
No, I don't believe it at all. I don't think he could have stopped himself from dying in any way.
Right.
But I think he could have taken Lysander out with him if he wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's also that.
Like, I think there's a situation where they draw, but I don't think there's a situation where he wins without dying to Lysander's bullets.
Yeah. I think his resolve was to let Lysander live regardless. Right. Mm-hmm. If Lysander doesn't shoot, I'm not going to stab him. If Lysander does shoot, I'm not going to stab him. Like it's a prisoner's gambit, and he was never going to turn him in.
Yep.
And to that point, I'm crying. It's fine. I've cried every time I've read this scene. I've cried 4 times today over the scene. I can't believe I still have emotions about this at this point, just because I've re-experienced it so much. This is the moment, of course, where I had to walk outside of the coffee shop, and I sobbed because I couldn't do it inside, which was really weird. I came back in, I ordered a fucking muffin, and the lady at the counter was like, and I've been waiting to tell this story for a long time on the show, for the record. But the lady at the counter, I bought 2 coffees that day, 1 muffin, and I came back in crying, and she was like, is everything okay? Did something happen? And I went, I just haven't eaten a lot today. And that's what I said. And then took the muffin, went back down to a chair and finished the book.
How'd she respond to that?
She just said okay, and like just it bounced off, you know, like when you say something weird to someone that they don't know how to respond with, it just bounces off, and she's like, okay, I'll get the coffee for you, don't worry, or the muffin for you, don't worry about it. And
I've been in situations like that as a bartender too. Like it'll either bounce off or you just, all right, they don't want to talk about it.
You have like a fun conversation, or whatever.
Well, I've never like tried to dig.
Yeah,
I'm not that kind of bartender. I'm not like the Cheers kind of bartender.
Fair enough.
If they don't want to talk about it, I'm not gonna pry.
Yeah, that was a lot, but this was the moment where I walked outside, and it was raining at this point.
Oh no!
And the coffee shop was going to close before Aaron was going to be able to pick me up, so I had to stand outside the rain after traveling all day, crying at this book.
How many hours were you at this coffee shop?
Like 5, 6. Yeah, 5. It was like 5 hours. Yeah, coffee shop was a whole bit. Not a bit of the podcast, though, but it's been fun to like think back and reference back to it, because it has been like a long... My experience with this book was starkly different than yours, of course, like they always are, because I just have different experience, because I'm blitzing through, or I'm reading them at whatever pace or whenever, you know, in my life, and then bringing them to you in a specific format to experience in a specific way. So
very controlled. I'm going to go rogue one of these times and I finished the book.
I fucking did it, dude. I fucking did it. Are you ready to talk about it? And I'm like, no, I don't remember shit about the end of the blade itself right now. Okay. So, needless to say, our man dies smiling, his razor falling out of his hand, Lysander leading him to the ground gently, and Cassius Bologna, beloved champion, morning knight of the Republic, despite there being no other knights, dies.
I need to pour another drink for the chin.
I have a little pour whiskey for the chin as well.
Cassius Bologna. You get some great Irish whiskey. I don't know if he was
5-age bullet bourbon.
Particularly fond of Irish whiskey, but he was fond of Lyria. So there's the connection.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I have scotch now, and it made more sense to me to do whiskey than to do scotch, because of like the recollection thing, and he is drinking whiskey more often than scotch. And I think he even comments once that like Darrow has like a predilection for scotch, and he doesn't necessarily have the same. Not that I think that he would turn away liquor, but I believe that that's a moment inside of the book somewhere here. I will ask a friend to confirm that for me later, but yeah,
I believe it. I don't have scotch, so I grabbed what whiskey I had.
Scotch, yeah. Again, for Lorne, for Darrow, for Roke, maybe, but not for Cassius. Whiskey for Cassius.
Yeah, it seems like Darrow likes scotch mostly because of Lorne.
I think so. I would also say that that's why. Cool. So, Lysander picks up Idme. Cool, dope. I really don't know how to like end this chapter.
A toddler with a nuclear.
Now I no longer care about Lysander. Yeah.
It's
a toddler with a grenade. Is that what you said?
A nuclear warhead.
Oh, different. Very different.
It's not.
Well,
it's not that different. The different is scale.
Yeah. Insert meme of that house exploding in Virginia yesterday.
Oh, no.
Me, if I had Lysander's home address. Anyway.
Oh,
yeah. Anyway. Fuck.
I don't know, man. Look into the news and see if this is problematic to talk about.
Yeah. Man, but that house went up, didn't it? It's really kind of crazy. It really like went. Yeah. Yeah, there's like
which is why I think it was a gas fire, even though I don't know.
I don't
or a
think
gas
so.
explosion. But like just the way it like whooshes out of like the windows and then I don't know. It could have just been bad audio. It was like traffic signal.
Yeah, it was some person with a phone, at 4 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, this is the most I've cried in an episode of this podcast for sure. Like, there's no doubt. I've maybe teared up a couple of times. Like, I cried for that character's death in Jade Legacy. I cried for, I don't know if I cried during Mistborn.
I think the only time I've cried while recording something has been for Petunia.
That's fair. Valid.
Yeah.
Did you tear up at all for Cassius when you hit the moment when he died? We have different emotional reactions, and that's fine. But I'm just curious about maybe.
I can't think of any passage of a book that I've cried over. Which isn't to say that that's not I'm not trying to be all macho or anything like that, but it just
no. Everyone reacts differently. I don't think that's macho or anything. I think I mentioned this even last episode. I've been more emotionally fragile, or 2 episodes ago, more I wouldn't call it fragile, but there are certain things that have wormed their way in that now make me cry, which I don't understand. They're new, which is weird. Mm-hmm. We talked about this already, so I don't need to rehash it, but yeah.
I think I've gotten close with some, I feel like Vin at one point, there was a near welling of tears reaction, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
Also,
I definitely
I'm so bad at remembering things that happened to me in general that it's totally possible that I've cried every single book I've read and I just don't remember it.
Does someone have a pandemonium chair that's extracting your memories? Is that what's going on? Do we need to have a conversation? Where's Kaylin? We're on the doll.
She's downstairs.
She's at work? Oh, she's downstairs today. Okay. Anyway, we need to march forward a little bit in this, just because we're only 2 goddamn chapters.
We're not done
with
this chapter.
We are over halfway. We already been done with this chapter. Yeah. There was one other thing I wanted. Relating to character death and crying. So one insert that I want to put in here from the Hill Reaper guys, of course, in their interview with Pierce, is he said one of the most emotional moments for him isn't the Cassius death is very emotional, but the one that gets him is the Darrow moment later. That's the one that makes him cry every time they need to edit, writing it and rereading it all the time. That's the one that breaks him down, which I also get.
Yeah, I get that.
Kind of an interesting comparison, but
no, I get that. Yeah. Because I think that's closer to the way that it's presented from this third person perspective, or not third person, but this outside person's perspective, feels much more like an analogous read of what he's feeling too. We just got back together. We just found this partnership again. And that feels probably more in line with how he feels about it than trying to put himself into the emotions of either of the characters fighting with each other.
Yeah. Or right. Or Lysander's muted emotions, of which he has to write, and has to make him feel muted. And in this glorious moment in which I punched him full of 18 bullets, saving one that he could have killed himself with, I guess. What the fuck? Glad he contemplated it. But beyond that was kind of mean.
No, I am too.
I don't think that'll let a lot of people, but Lysander earned it in this book, finally.
I think that would have been a good death for him.
It would have been acceptable.
It would have been better than surviving.
Yeah, at this point, guys wielding biological weapons, and I'm not happy about it. All right, just because we have to get on, let's get out of this chapter so we can talk about Darrow. We then cut to, and I'm mostly leading that side of continuing to linger in the shit, so I'm gonna just press forward. So we then cut to Lysander confronting Demetrius, of whom is sent to kill the Raw, while Kyber is actually sent after him to execute the remaining members of Neelis, the Zero Legion. Shocking, horrifying, but real. Which is cool. It's interesting that so quickly Lysander has assembled the other side of this plan of, okay, Kyber, go do that. And she's more than willing to, of course. And you obviously know that they need to die, as they know the truth that Atlas is dead, because he says that to them, of which he kind of holds to his chest, it seems, within the society, but not within the Republic. He's okay with the Republic knowing that Atlas is dead, but he's not okay with the society. Did you notice that throughout?
It's weird. It is weird.
Yeah. He's like going to kind of wield Atlas as a tool of fear, I think, going forward.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of reasons for it.
Right. Naturally.
I think he could probably fairly easily pass it off as a counterintelligence propaganda campaign. Like sowing bad information to the Republic, like intentionally spreading this lie. But saying like I sent Atlas out to deal with this obscure thing or whatever. Yeah, I think he could do that.
And also, Lysander again has started to behave like Atlas anyway. So like, who's to say that he couldn't come up with whatever the plan is and operate that way?
Yeah, maybe.
I'm putting a lot of faith in him at that point to do that, but
I don't think he's
not as competent.
He's not competent in it. He just like has been led to think the same way.
Yeah, he gets it. He's not competent in it. Good point.
So something that this section made me think about is jam field technology and how it actually like mechanically works. Because like pulse armor and electronics still work within, like encompassed within a jam field. So hypothetically, if there was a camera, which I'm assuming there are cameras all over this fucking like the Lightbringer, like I'm assuming there are cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
So any cameras that are entirely enclosed within this jam field, do they still function? Like, are they still recording what's happening within the jam field? I don't think that they can transmit outside of it. But if there's like local recording on a camera in this hangar 17B, does that stay intact?
I would assume so. So the thing that I would say about jam fields is they seem to be, I would call them like effectively illegal. Like they are obviously a problem, as they've been spoken about consistently throughout the series. Like the fact that Fitchner uses one in Red Rising, he cites as like a real big bad no-no. And I think similarly throughout the entire series, they're kind of derided as a sort of like last resort kind of a thing. So yeah, I would imagine that it would if they recorded locally, but I think that there aren't that many that are used that frequently. And so they aren't common.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So it's not like a common consideration for a camera.
That's fair. It would just be very interesting to find a little SD card on this camera.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think that if they recorded that way, so speaking to the technology capability, if it records that way, I think it would be fine. I think that's how the technology would define itself. However, I think it's so rare or rarefied that they probably wouldn't do that. Not only that, but this whole society is designed around golds. Who's going to have jam fields? The golds are going to have jam fields. What are they going to want? Not having access to that. Right?
Yeah.
Like they're going to want that to work and prevent that part of the process. So they're probably not going to insulate against it as well.
That's fair.
But like that's kind of a dance around way of getting to that conclusion. So it'd be cool to have a firm answer, but I think I'm in your camp. If it were recorded locally, I think it'd be fine. Obviously can't transmit, so wouldn't be able to if that's the case.
Okay. I so badly want him to get fucked by some SD card out of a shitty old webcam that's sitting in the top of the hangar. I don't know.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'd love that if Pytha set up a webcam of the whole thing, or like it leaks at some point.
Yeah,
imagine the damage that would do. Mm-hmm. I would love to see Cassius come back in that fashion.
It'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. All right, onward. Finally, we're 2 hours into recording, and we've done 2 chapters.
We've got
half of the
5
notes.
more.
Half of the notes. Cut. So, we're in the middle of recording this episode, and we've come to realize that it is already very long. So we are going to come back to you tomorrow with the other half of this episode. Today, what you're getting to listen to is 83 and 84, obviously. And tomorrow we will be presenting you with 85 through 89 to round this out as a full two-parter. I had a thought that this was going to be this long, and we both did at the beginning of the episode. Even when we looked at the notes, we hoped maybe that we wouldn't, but at the same time, it deserves the amount of time. So double episode this week is a treat.
That'll be fun. Yeah, it's going to be a long one. I think like there's no way that we would be able to release it as a single episode. I think.
Even by size, like this is going to be 5 hours or 6 hours of recording.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to need to be split regardless. We might as well save ourselves a little bit and split the recording too.
Yeah. So with that, tomorrow you will get 85 through 89. And if you have any other questions or things like that, or even thoughts that you want to drop in, do it, because we would love to hear your thoughts as it relates to Cassius's death, but it'll also be nice to approach the rest of the episode as a separate chunk. It'll let me rethink it, because I'm not going to lie, I don't want to talk about Lysander's chapter right now in 88, and I think I can approach it more rationally and reasonably if I have a little bit of distance from 84. Yep. So yes, very excited to do that. So that'll be a part of the plan. Again, because we are approaching our postseason that we haven't really talked a whole lot about yet, we have a number of guests lined up. I'd anticipate about 4 or 5 episodes, somewhere in there, before we start First Law. So very excited. Keep that in mind. And then there will begin that trek. So any questions that you want us to answer in any of those post episodes, though, we've got a number of guests, including a lot of returning folks that you've seen, listened to, and heard before on the show. So
I'm excited to find out who those are.
That's super cool that you're excited, because you know at least 3 of them.
I know all of them. It's fine.
Yeah, I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, I thought I've given you all the information. Yeah, this isn't new.
I am aware.
Okay, cool.
But I like to be on the audience's side on all this. I like to
all right. Well, that's
see you as this, I don't know, antagonist that we have to fight against.
Fair enough. With that, we will see you tomorrow with all of our post links, credits, and Patreon shout outs and everything like that. So talk to you then.
Bye.
Bye.